Regulations play a very fundamental role in any industry because it really provides like a framework of rules and standards for manufacturers to follow.
Do you hear customers on a regular basis?
We have a very detailed program from where we collect insights through our marketing teams.
How do you tackle decoding insurance as a topic and spreading the word out to a category as a Gen Z?
We've brought in humor to be able to reach across to this segment in specific. Balancing consumer communication and regulatory guidelines is the biggest challenge.
If compliance were a superhero, what would its superpower be? Welcome to The Cover Story, a podcast series by Tata AIA Life Insurance, where we speak to our leaders, customers, advisors, employees, and more to go behind the cover in understanding life insurance. Today, we're joined by Gayatri Nathan, who's the Chief Compliance Officer at Tata AIA Life Insurance. Today, we will discuss how regulations shape the insurance industry, balancing customer messaging within regulatory frameworks, and Tata AIA's commitment to building a strong ethical compliance culture. Gayatri, firstly, welcome on the show and thank you for doing this and taking our time to do this. I want to talk regulation.
Right.
So, regulation, compliance, all of that in today's episode. Can you just start off by elaborating a little on how regulation happens in the insurance industry, and if you could just provide us with an overview of how regulation happens?
Let me start with explaining what regulations really do, right? If I have to say, regulations play a very fundamental role in any industry because it really provides like a framework of rules and standards for any manufacturers to follow, which is mainly to do with protecting consumer interests, making sure that fair practices are in place, and the financial system is sort of managed. It's no different in life insurance in that sense. For us, this is done by Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, which is IRDAI. They came into existence 2.5 decades back in 2000. And over this 2.5 decades, they've beautifully, covered a very wide range of areas to make sure that things function smoothly. If I have to, talk of how they've gone about doing that, they've gone right from product development in terms of how products are to be designed, marketed, sold, how insurers must manage complaints, how they must ensure that they have enough capital to make sure that they have money to pay claims. All of this gets covered as part of regulations. If I have to, say it even more simply, I'd say, regulations is like the safety net, which ensures that insurers don't take excessive risks. Insurers prevent, or rather, there is no scope to missell or promote unfair practices, and at the same time make sure that consumers' interests are intact. And they also review insurers regularly to make sure that they don't fail on their committed promises in terms of what the regulation protects us from. Now, if I have to say how the regulator goes about monitoring insurance companies, they make sure that through adequate disclosures, with enough by stipulating what kind of solvency margins to maintain. Again, they are ensuring that an insurance company performs its duties, which are required by us. So the regulation really, in that sense, is like a a conscience keeper of the industry, if I may use that word, which ensures things function smoothly for all insurance companies.
Okay.
Ultimately, what do we want? We want that insurers remain on track. They perform as per the ethical standards and promote the welfare of the community for the purpose that they are set up. I think regulation really helps us with that. This helps us gain trust from consumers, keeps the industry intact, and on the whole protects not just the individual consumers but the economy at large.
All right. Gayatri, that's very well put in terms of how the regulation happens in the industry specifically. If you could just let us know about how does the regulatory authorities ensure that the insurance companies operate within those standards, because there are a lot of standards and there must be a lot of guidelines that the companies must adhere to. If you could just give us an overview of how they ensure that companies do work within this guidelines and areas and don't go beyond it.
Right. It's been 2.5 decades since the privatization happened, and the regulations have evolved over time. And like I mentioned earlier, Deepak, apart from guidelines around products, policyholder protection regulations, likewise investment regulations, finance regulations, all of these from time to time have evolved, and they have laid down what are practices, what are disclosures, what are regular reportings the insurers must do, and the regulator sort of oversees them. So how is it that the regulator ensures that these practices are being followed? I think there are lots and lots of disclosures we make publicly as well as to the regulator. Second, the regulators also define corporate governance guidelines. How is it that every insurer must go about monitoring the functioning of an insurance company? At a board level, there are multiple subcommittees. The corporate governance guidelines takes care of that. So with all of these kind of practices in place, it becomes it's sort of structured to ensure that the boundaries are well laid, to put in place ethical standards, right market practices, ensure that the consumer's interests are intact, plus at the same time to ensure that the financial stability or financial viability of an insurance company is taken care of.
Got it. So there are a lot of layers and there are a lot of things that the regulatory body takes care of when setting those standards, so that insurance companies have an idea of what to adhere to and cater to.
That's right.
Um, if you can just share a couple of examples of how Tata AIA adheres to those regulatory standards by the regulatory bodies, to make it easier for our audience to understand.
From the perspective of, for us, regulatory compliance as well as meeting the ethical standards that we've defined for ourselves, we've put in place several practices as an organization, not just to ensure that we meet them, but we exceed them. It starts right from how we go about designing a product. We follow based on what the regulator expects, the guidelines the regulator has laid down, right from the designing of the product. We have a very, very rigorous process that's in place. We have a product management committee which has cross functional members across the organization, right from actuaries to products to business teams to legal compliance teams to the operations and the technology team, which actually sit together to lay down, to ensure that the guidelines are something we abide by, and at the same time we look at what is it that changing consumer insights are, and design products in line with that. So it starts with product design itself following the required regulations that have been defined. Then, in terms of training and certification, as a practice, right from the beginning, we've ensured all our employees, all our distributors, agents, intermediaries, they go through the mandatory training programs that make people aware about the regulations, so that business practices are aligned with them. It's not just the standard training, but we also go beyond that to saying the why behind it, why they exist, and what it means in day-to-day practice. So this is again a mandatory program that all our employees go through. We have a market conduct team that monitors how practices across all businesses are being run. So if there are any deviations, we make sure that we take corrective action so that consumer interests are protected. We have a very good complaint management process in place, grievance redressal process. So in line with the regulatory guidelines, apart from timelines and standard protocols, we make sure that we dispose complaints in a fair and efficient manner, thereby hearing what the issue is, making sure that it goes through a process of fair evaluation and then a resolution. We also have a committee called the Continuous Improvement Council, which is chaired by our MD and CEO, where we actually review the trends of complaints on a quarterly basis. Again, it's a cross-functional team with key members across all functions in the organization. We go into root causes. We look at what systemic fixes can be put in place to make sure that grievances are prevented, or and of course we remediate with suitable actions. So this ensures that we are understanding what are things that are not working. To give an example on that, recently, and it's a very interesting example, what we saw was consumers read through and understood or were taken through a lot of product materials, but sometimes they missed this, the finer nuances of what the product did not cover, more so the exclusions. So we actually initiated this particular area with which we started calling out what the product does not offer or what the product excludes. So, it basically then clears any misconceptions consumers may have and help them make informed decisions. We've recently gone live with this couple of months back to improve, the decisions on customer purchase. Apart from that, there are regular audits that happen. Be it our audit team or the compliance team, at periodic intervals, there are audits being done. I've already spoken about regulatory reportings that we do, be it on solvency, on capital, how we transparently disclose items in our marketing materials. All of that also takes care of ensuring that we follow the right standards, and we follow we are driven to do things in an ethical manner. We also have our group companies that regularly spend time with us to review our practices. Both Tata and AI have a practice through their compliance teams to review the compliance standards that we follow. The idea being, we want to make sure that we have the highest level of standards being adhered to and complied to as is required from a regulatory standpoint. So these are some practices that we follow as an organization to ensure that we remain within the operating guidelines and regulations that have been laid down.
That's very interesting because, and thank you for sort of breaking it down so in a very detailed manner. There's one point you mentioned about customer insight, and you
Right.
also mentioned that in the example that you mentioned. Can you go a little deeper on that and maybe talk about customer insight in terms of how do you get insights from customers? Do you hear customers on a regular basis? How do you hear customers? You mentioned about customers not having that clarity about exclusions. How did you get to know about them not having that enough clarity about exclusions? Did you do some research? Were there newsletters rolled out? Was there customer feedback forms that they filled out? And how did you sort of make that change into your new product?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question you asked, Deepak. So, from an insight point of view, again, we have several ways to listen to what consumers or what the changing trends are and what consumers are expecting. And this is across segments. So, we have a very detailed program from where we collect insights through our marketing teams on an ongoing basis. There are diagnostics done based on, evolving product ideas that come up, that we go and research with consumer segments. That's one way that we go and find out what consumers are expecting. Another way is consumers who have recently purchased or who have been with us for a long time. We have a very detailed program running on collecting consumer expectations, feedback post transactions. So we run these transactional surveys where we ask them for inputs and feedback about how their experience has been with us at that point of time, and also anything else that they'd like to contribute to be able to strengthen our services as well as our products. So we hear feedback there. This is one method. The other one is complaints. So we did hear some consumers sometimes, there are misconceptions around how many years do I need to pay? Does my product cover only life, or do I also get mediclaim benefits? Sometimes there is misconception about life and health benefits. So there are common misconceptions like this. So what we felt is, all the while our thought around disclosures have been, let us clearly call out how much is the premium you need to pay, how often, how long, and when does your policy mature. So we were thinking on these lines, but we were seeing that this was still not going through with few customers who were still not getting a hang of, अच्छा मुझे 5 साल भरना है and ये 1 साल का product नहीं है. So things like this we've started saying then, let's call them as exclusions. So one item to say is, or what the product is not offering. So if it is a regular premium plan, we started calling out, this is not a single premium plan. So then it stands out saying this is not a one-time investment plan. Likewise, we wanted to make sure that consumers are aware about how long they have to stay, meaning the maturity benefit. So talk about, this is a 20-year plan. I get a coverage for X rupees. And in between that, life insurance being a long-term product, if you choose to surrender the product, there are heavy penalties. So make them aware about, there is a surrender penalty that will apply. Your product does not offer exit in the middle of the plan, and there are surrender penalties that shall apply. This was another thing to call out explicitly. Third, we saw there was sometimes also confusion between who was covered. So, father taking a policy on a child, or a husband taking a policy on spouse, sometimes there's confusion on who the life insured is. So it was very essential to call out who is covered in this plan. So we used very, very specific points like that based on the kind of complaints we came across, to plug them and started calling out what the policy does not offer, so that people are clear that this is how the policy will
And this
work.
is important for customers, because when we sort of go through the website or say like an ad,
Yeah,
and what we see is like the bigger words written, but when we see a disclosure, we click on it, we see a disclosure,
yeah,
it makes it clearer for the audience to understand, and the customers to understand that, hey, this is not included
right,
and this is included, so that there is disclosure from your end,
right.
which makes it easier for consumers like us to make an informed decision.
That's right.
Got it. In terms of consumers, I want to pick your brain on that. Consumers usually want like a smaller explanation. They don't want like a detailed explanation to things.
Yeah.
Whereas the regulatory body might require a detailed explanation. So how do you balance the communication between the two?
Yeah. So you've asked a very interesting question again, Deepak. I think balancing consumer communication and regulatory guidelines, if I may say, is the biggest challenge for a team like compliance. It is a big challenge.
Okay.
You're right. Consumers expect crisp, easy to understand, content.
Mhm.
They want it to be, jargon free. And at the same time, from our perspective, we want to protect consumer interests, make all the disclosures possible, and therefore then it sometimes ends up being detailed. So it is a challenge. The way we address it, and we have evolved on this over time, and we're quite happy to see how we've gone about this over the last few years. What we've done is we start with understanding what's the core of the regulation. What is it that the regulation wants us to address from a disclosure point of view? So that we ensure is included, and there is no compromise in terms of what needs to be included, because then you take care of the regulatory aspects, especially from a language point of view. Then we work very closely. It's a collaborative effort between the marketing, product, legal, compliance teams to see how to then stitch the two together by making sure both interests are taken care of. How we have addressed this is also by moving from long texts to illustrations, to infographics,
Okay.
to more some in some areas which are complex, we've moved to videos. So, and then interactive FAQs.
What's the difference in consumer understanding both these formats?
I think that it talks about retention. I think
Okay.
consumers today are so quick with everything,
Yeah.
that if you see, it's just optics, right? If you see a lot of text, the temptation is,
It
this is
seems
boring.
like
Let me
boring,
just, yeah. So move from that format to then illustrations or infographics, which makes it interesting for consumers to stay on the content, to go through it. So that's how we've gone about trying to address both the regulatory requirements as well as taking care of consumers retention on what we want to communicate through the content. We've also done another thing. We started testing material before releasing it. So we do like a A/B testing,
Hmm.
like try multiple formats and see what works better with consumers. You also have tech solutions now to seeing where do consumers see which part of information placed where, get better
Hmm.
readability. So we've used things like that, combination of testing as well as tech tools to be able to keep improving our communication.
I'm sure this must be very interesting for you and the entire team at large, because testing it out gives you sort of
Yeah,
an idea in terms of what is working for you, and then you can double down on and sort of double click on what's really working, and then put in all your resources on
that's
that.
right. That's
You
right.
mentioned a couple of things in terms of content and retention, and which brings me to a very interesting audience segment, which is Gen Zs.
Okay.
You mentioned content and retention. So, how do you tackle decoding insurance as a topic and spreading the word out to a category as a Gen Z? Because they're very quick, they're very smart. Sometimes I don't understand what my niece and my nephew talks about, which is very interesting because then they use words like low-key and all of that, which to me is unheard of. But I want you to sort of decode from a life insurance perspective, if you could just decode how communication happens to Gen Zs as a target market.
Right. So I think evolved very beautifully even in the Gen Z segment, and we've also taken some time to understand and learn, how to communicate to them. The first thing we realized is catch Gen Zs where you find them the most, which is in digital spaces.
Mhm.
So this segment is not going to read hard copies and documents. It's not going to work for them. So it was to go through the digital route to be able
Correct.
to communicate and engage with them. Second, more bite-sized information, which is things that they will understand, is what you talk to them about. You spoke about popularizing insurance to them. So here, we're also as an industry working on a campaign to drive popular awareness of insurance across segments. And the quote we have come up with is "Sabse pehle life insurance."
Hmm.
Okay, so what we are trying to work on, Gen Z is included, is unfortunately in our country, sometimes insurance is not right up in the pecking order.
Hmm.
But really, from the perspective of protection, it is to be on top. And this consumers realize when they see an eventuality hit. If there is somebody around in close circle or your friends, you've lost a family member, that's when you start thinking about how will the financials be addressed. I in fact have recently come across a friend who lost her husband, and her child is studying with my son, and immediately the questions are around how will the education expenses get managed, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So the whole idea was to think about how to communicate how important the safety net is to the younger population,
Hmm.
to the advantage of Gen Zs and the way the life insurance industry has always been there. You are paying lesser insurance if you take a term policy at a younger age. So the whole idea was, how can we have people understand this early on in their career once they start working,
Okay.
and protect their incomes, with a fixed a premium at that age, and then continue the policy for lifelong, so that you have a financial protection in case of an eventuality that happens. So we've used, concepts like, demonstrating. You'll see this in the ads that come out in the industry, demonstrating how someone has lost out because of not having an insurance policy,
Hmm.
and thereby enlightening them with this need, which is more like a realization than like a push saying you must buy this at this point
Correct.
of
Correct.
time. And then use of the same stuff like videos, infographics, illustrations, equate the small amount of premiums to casual spends, things like that, to say
Hmm.
it's really not such a big investment that we're thinking about. It's about just saying this is important to do it first, and then just be completely fikr free from the
Hmm.
perspective of protecting your loved ones.
That's very interesting. I have two questions basis what you just answered. One is, why is Gen Z a market for you at all? Because Gen Zs would be primarily in the age group of, say, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, early younger people who are like 18, 19, 20 years old, who are college goers and school goers. They already have a lot on their plates in terms of setting up their careers. So why are Gen Zs even a target market for you for a topic as traditionally conceived as a little more conservative and for people above 30 usually? And two is, how do you mentioned about in infographics and videos for attention. Do you do something in specific to grab the attention of a Gen Z? Because they're primarily on the internet, on their phones, on Instagram, on YouTube, all the time.
Yeah.
So do you do something in specific? Do you do fun ads and use cool words to sort of grab their attention so that they now know that, okay, this is maybe sort of a boring topic, but this has been made very interesting by Tata AIA. So those are the two questions.
Yeah. Gen Zs would be like, people who are early goer, who've recently started working, could be anywhere between 2 to 5 years in terms
Yeah.
of work ex. They have decent income, and the whole idea is to protect that income, right? So from the perspective of why is it an important segment for us, and is that at all a segment for us? It's a very important segment for us. And insurance being a long term contract, we write contracts for anywhere ranging between 15 years to even 35, 40 years.
Right.
So from that perspective, there is a very solid case for Gen Zs to buy a policy when they are young, and then get committed to that low premium for a lifetime. Then as you go along, as your life state changes, you can keep increasing your life insurance coverage depending on, if you have dependents these days, a lot of things have changed in terms of how people want to settle. So it really depends on every individual's requirement at that stage. Now, how do we make it interesting for them? So this is on the protection segment. You also have segments like savings. Now, I've seen a mix of Gen Zs. There are Gen Zs who are high risk takers. There are Gen Zs who say, I want my money guaranteed. So we have savings plan which take care of giving you dual benefits, which is the life insurance coverage as well as guaranteed benefits at the end of the term. And there are also regular returns that are paid through the term of the policy. So all of this, in terms of explaining to consumers, especially Gen Zs, what works is simple social media posts, easy one saying, what's the amount you pay, what's the amount you get. So the pay get strategy. Second, explaining what are the specific dimensions about the instrument that you're investing in, and therefore then the other things that I spoke earlier about. How long do I pay? How much do I pay? How often do I pay? How long do I stay? All of that, and the coverage, helps them understand what I'm investing into. Thirdly, we've seen that mostly Gen Zs prefer digital communication. They want to do things on their own. So we've enabled everything in the digital space. If you would like to get assistance, we are available. Our advisors will reach you. So we've crafted, the delivery mechanisms to meet Gen Zs from the perspective of purchase of a policy. We've made it simple. We've tried to decongest it, make it as easy as a Gen Z would like it, digitally enabled, as well as assistance required if you need kind of solutions. Apart from this, I think largely they do things on their own. I found that they want to be, when it comes to making premium payments, they want simple 2-click process. So just enable everything online. Give them give them reminders which are easy to. Your content should be easy to understand, and be available to them when they need help. If you take care of these basics, I think they're pretty much. They're happy with what they in terms of their expectations are met. We've also started this new way of communicating, which is for the Gen Zs and younger population. We've brought in humor to be able to reach across to this segment in specific. Atul Khatri, Kenny, they've all used their own ways to sort of bring in why insurance is important. And we've got a lot of people, we've seen a lot of uptake with this way of communicating to our audiences.
Kudos to you and the entire company at large for tapping onto the Gen Z market and doing something very interesting and exciting for the Gen Z audience, because what we see and what we consume on the internet um, is we just want like quick size, bite size information presented in a simple, cool way so that we can grasp it, which speaks a lot about your culture internally as well. So if you could just talk through us about the culture of compliance within Tata AIA.
So at Tata AIA, fostering a culture of compliance goes far beyond rules and regulations. And it's about having a shared mindset of integrity, responsibility, and customer centricity across all levels of the organization. I'd say our senior management actually sets the tone by regularly talking about the importance of ethical standards, ethical code of conduct, and makes sure that compliance to all business decisions is an absolute requirement. This is reinforced at every most discussions. Uh, what this does is, through this, we're able to ensure that compliance is not seen as a checkbox activity. It is seen as an important way for us to operate. So I think that's one thing we do. Second, we empower employees by making sure, I spoke of training earlier as well, but by actually bringing in, doing workshops, bringing in live examples of how sometimes rules, regulations bring in certain constraints, but by getting people together in a workshop format, we solve for them to convert regulations to practical ways to implement them. So that way employees feel empowered, and they also understand the why behind doing things. If there is a certain thing expected by way of a policy or a regulation. Third, we have very clear policies laid down uh, for just about everything, and they are accessible to everybody. So we encourage everybody to regularly read them on their own. Again, they have been made available in formats that are easy to consume, so that helps. There's something to go to be able to understand the policy better. We also have employees. We encourage employees to ask questions or even report any issues that come about through our whistleblower policy, and the channels that we've established for that. We keep popularizing that on a regular basis. We make sure that people are given the comfort that there'll be no retaliation or any consequences on reporting an issue to them if they do highlight any concerns. We do this regularly. We have a very strong culture of also recognition of teams and people who display exemplary compliance behaviors. I think that way it's a positive way to reinforce, doing the right things the right way. At the same time, we also make sure that in case of non-compliance behavior, there is accountability by taking actions. So it's both ways. We also continuously engage as a compliance team with all functions so that we don't get seen as siloed units, be it business teams, operations, marketing, finance, investments, HR, everyone. We work with them very closely. It's the whole idea is to make it like it is second nature to us. It is not being done because it has to be done. And then over time, we see that people recognize the importance of it and just do it, by default. I think that's the way we really drive the culture in the organization.
That's very interesting, because there are a lot of ways in which it's not just the people who are doing a good job or an exemplary sort of a contribution to the company and that they're being awarded for that, but there are also people who are not doing enough and they're being penalized for that. So it's not like just award and that's it. There's both ways. So the good and the bad both are being taken care of.
That's right.
Can you talk us a little about the future of compliance in that case? Because what does the future hold for consumers and people at large?
There are a lot of regulations that have changed already last year, and they have been very progressive ones. I really compliment how the regulator has actually taken up some really important topics and made changes. But if you ask me, there are many more things that can shape the industry by way of compliance. If I have to talk about a couple of them, I'd say digital has sort of come about in every space, sales, service, claims, everywhere, right? I think the future will also be of digital coming into the space of compliance, where advanced analytics, more use of AI tools, which helps us to become real time and preventive rather than reactive. If I have to use like an example, if you look at these automatic lane assists that came into play in the motor industry, right? Where you automatically are brought back into track if you are seen moving beyond the white railing. It is a great automation that has been brought about in the industry to be able to bring people on track and ensure that nothing, no accidents happen. It's sort of like that when I say use of digital in the compliance space. Likewise, use of Gen AI. I see Gen AI coming in a lot more, especially in terms of being able to read through long, long text or repetitive routine tasks in a faster and a more accurate way. Do away with interpretations with two different people in a more consistent fashion. So those kind of things as well, I think will change the industry. But while I say that, I also know that we also have to be careful about Gen AI outcomes. So for compliance teams, you have to be watching out for both spaces, the enabling space as well as the risks associated with it. So largely from a technology point of view, I see these two things playing in. I also see very strong or rather stronger customer centricity kicking in. It's not about just adhering to processes, but customer outcomes. That's what really matters. It should result into what we've laid out as an end goal. Most of the regulations now are directed towards that. So if you ask me, I think it's a combination of, if you ask me the future of compliance, it is a combination of stronger technology, Gen AI powered, deep customer centric focus, better corporate governance guidelines, all of it together, which will shape the industry as we go along with the intervention of regulations and thereby compliance.
Got it. In terms of, you mentioned technology and Gen AI coming into the picture in terms of assessing risks as well. Can you just throw some light on it in terms of how, because AI sometimes can go here and there as well, and you obviously have a set pattern and guidelines to adhere to. So how do you sort of make sure to use AI and still adhere to those guidelines and maintain that boundary?
Right. So we've started this in bits and pieces, and like if I have to give you an example of chatbots, right? We've trained chatbots using Gen AI tools to be able to respond to customer queries. Now, the only thing we have to be careful here about is the Gen AI should not end up giving responses which are not the right answers. So the ways to doing it is way before you make it live, before launching it, you do enough testing of it and you do enough training of scenarios that you see can be, in that sense, possibly a not so desirable outcome. So your mechanisms to launch earlier probably were standard test beds. That has to change now to doing a lot more than what you were doing. Maybe 5 times that of what you were doing earlier. Test them with a lot of more negative scenarios of where you see Gen AIs can fail. And then make sure you define the boundaries to regulate some portions of responses, because at the end you're giving things in writing. So you have to make sure that you've given the right responses.
Correct.
So that the guidance is right, there's no misconception created out of it, and consumers can make informed decisions. So,
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gayatri, for taking our time. This was a wonderful chat. This brings me to my last segment, which is the rapid fire round. I have a couple of questions. I want you to sort of be as rapid as you can.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Uh, First question: what's one regulatory change you believe will shape the future of insurance?
Okay, I think there are three actually, Deepak. One, the composite license. The life and the non-life players operating under one license can indeed be a game changer. It can make it seamless for the industry. The second one, the regulator's been pushing value-added services, so it will go beyond traditional insurance into wellness and improve consumer experience. The third one being FDI limits being increased. With that, we see a lot of global capital coming in. There will be more competition and thereby more innovation. So, three.
Awesome. I'll give you brownie points for that. Number two, biggest challenge for compliance teams today.
I think it's about bringing the right balance between creativity and abiding by what the laws, regulations expect. But like I said, it's a challenge that can be addressed. It's by making sure that the core of the regulation is well understood. What cannot be compromised is kept as is, and then solutions are found to make it easy, concise, jargon-free. Acceptable standards, like you said, use of cool words, emojis, whatever else, to be able to bring in the right balance.
All right. If compliance were a superhero, what would its superpower be?
The superpower would be, I think, having an X-ray vision, being able to see the risks in processes quickly and then, sort of solve for them. That's our job, right? To anticipate what can go wrong and then prevent them from happening.
If you had to choose one key skill for anyone working in compliance, what would that be?
At this point of time, I'd say sound judgment. You're a two and a half decades industry. There are a lot of regulations that have come about. Just knowing them is not sufficient. It's about being able to use them in a practical way from an implementation point of view, which also takes care of, business perspectives.
What's one myth about compliance you'd like to bust forever?
That it's a very, that things get slowed down with compliance. But actually, to the contrary, what we believe is we are truly enablers by making sure that the right inquiries are made. We can make sure we don't make costly mistakes and ensure that we are on track for sustainable growth as an organization.
You could describe Tata AIA's compliance culture in one word.
I'd say proactive.
Okay.
Always future or forward thinking, and making sure that we provide paths and ways to create a larger franchise as we go along.
All right. The last question, your favorite quote that inspires you at work?
This one is my all-time favorite, and it's remained, it's not just from a compliance perspective. I think it's even in our day-to-day lives. It's about, from an integrity point of view, can you do the same things even when no one's watching you? So, stay on doing the right things the right way, and with the right people. That's our mission as well. And I think that if you're able to live that, you don't need to really worry about, are you compliant to something? I think it's second
You're
nature
more
to you.
free.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gayatri, for taking your time and doing this. I hope you had a good chat.
Absolutely. I had a wonderful time. Thank you, Deepak. It was wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you. And if you could just share any last words or message to the audience watching, what would that be?
Okay, so for consumers, I'd say it's a product, an insurance product is a solution that you're getting invested into for a long time. It's a long-term contract. So invest the time upfront to understand what the policy covers, whom the benefits are for, because often it's the nominee who benefits from the plan. So making that investment upfront makes sure that you don't have any surprises later and there are no misconceptions. So that's what I would say for consumers. I'd also say there is a when you buy a policy, you get like a returns and an exchange feature, which is called free look, which is for the first 1 month after you purchase the plan. If you want to make any alterations or cancel the policy, that flexibility is there with consumers. So I'd say invest the time to understand what you've bought, what you've invested into. To distributors, I'd say it's really important to make consumers understand the big picture on what they're investing into. That way, consumers are confident about the choices they've made, and it makes gets them to make informed decisions and builds trust for the long run. For our employees at Tata AIA Life, I would say I think it's been in our in the way we operate on a day-to-day basis, which comes from our both our group companies, Tata as well as EIA, of doing the right things in the right way. Feel free to ask, feel free to suggest, feel free to report, and and it's your company. We're all in it together to make sure that we abide by the regulations and the processes that we've set in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gayatri. And thank you to the audience tuning in. I hope you had a wonderful chat. This was very much centered towards compliance and culture. I hope you had a wonderful chat. You know the drill. Like, share, and subscribe for more such content. Thank you so much for watching.